Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for the opportunity. So we were invited to talk about a program that we have at Woolworths called Farming for the Future. And I think it's interesting that we've been invited to participate because it's not something when we started the program that we considered as an adaptation or mitigation program. It was just something we felt we needed to do in the context of that I'll paint a bit later. But it's fascinating to see how it resonates with what we've been speaking about up to now from the other presentations. So just by way of some background, at Woolworths, we have a program called the Good Business Journey, which is our overall sustainable and good business or responsible business program. And it covers a number of areas, and we have 8 focus areas currently, which you see on the screen. It's quite diverse, whether it's ethical sourcing or climate change and energy, covers people and transformation, waste. But one of them is sustainable farming, which you'll see on the top row, second from left. And this is an identification that amongst all the important things that we need to be considering as a responsible business, farming is intrinsic to that, and that we need to be focusing on responsible agriculture. So if you are a Woolworths customer, you would have noticed this logo that's in the middle of the screen on some of the fresh produce, whether it's grapes or some of the other fruits or vegetables, or even of some our horticulture now. And this is an indication that if you see this logo, that it is coming from a farm, a supplier that is on the Farming for the Future program. So by way of context for the program and why it started and how it started is, at Woolworths, we source between 90 and 95% of our produce locally in the south of Southern Africa. And we know the challenges that we face in this part of the world. We have low rainfall. South Africa itself has about half the global annual average of rainfall. We have very little truly fertile soil for agriculture, for rain-fed agriculture. We heard earlier that majority of the land in South Africa is suitable for livestock farming or for grazing. We need to produce a variety of crops at the same time to feed our population. And so we know that agriculture uses the greatest proportion of water from any sector of society, whether it's in South Africa or globally. Up to 60% of water is used by agriculture, excuse me. We also have a rapidly changing environmental context. We have increasing pressures on us as a society and as a business, things like climate change, biodiversity loss. We spoke about poor soil quality, this urbanization, this decreasing population. There's also a huge problem on food loss and waste, not just locally, but globally. So that's the context in which Farming for the Future was birthed at Woolworths. So the program was started in its infancy back in 2005, and it was trialed for between 2005 and 2009 on about 12 farms. And it really began with our colleagues in our who deal with our agriculture and fresh produce sourcing, sitting down with some farmers who were also aware of these issues and saying, how do we do better in this space? How do we farm more responsibly, more aware of the context that in which we operate? And from that initial trial, the program was officially launched as Farming for the Future in 2009. So late 2009. So we're currently in its anniversary year now, its 10th anniversary year, and have made significant progress in that time. So if we say what is Farming for the Future, it's our commitment to work with suppliers, farmers basically, in order to improve farming practice in South Africa. It's to improve food security, protect biodiversity, water, soil resources. It's about farming responsibly, consciously, scientifically, understanding the context in which we're operating and being responsive to that. So in order to do that, we developed a system in-house to ensure continuous improvement of the farmers through the application of an independently, and that's an important part, it's an independently audited system to measure and report on their practices annually. So farmers that are on this program, so these are all suppliers to us, and farmers are on this program go through an annual evaluation process. So we have a third-party organization of agronomists that go out and track their performance. And the idea is that there's a number of performance areas that I'll talk to shortly, but each one of them is measured in for the context in which we're looking at, so per farm. And the farmers are then given an improvement program, essentially based on the parameters that they're on their farm. So why that is important is to ensure that it's contextually relevant. It's not a one size fits all. The parameters might be, or the performance areas might be consistent, but the type of improvement required might vary from farm to farm. And this is, so once farmers get the baseline assessment, they go through an annual audit and assessment process. And it's essentially a system of continuous improvement across a variety of elements. And so the program covers these and a few other areas, and it's quite comprehensive. So it's around, essentially it's about ensuring healthy soil which requires less inputs, which requires less water, which will store more nutrients, produce more crops, less runoff, less harmful application of harmful chemicals and pesticides and so on. Idea being that you want the soil to be healthy, you want to produce healthy food, you want to protect the ecosystem around it, you want to ensure biodiversity health, you want to be mindful of water. So it takes into account issues around soil health, how farmers irrigate, looks at ensure compliance with legal requirements, strong focus on biodiversity management, looks at waste as well and water management on farms, waste and wastewater. Goes beyond that, but looks at farmers' cooling and energy usage, looks at farmers, in fact, on this program start becoming aware of the carbon impacts of their production, the operations, not just on the land, but the equipment they use. It's entire modules on pest and plant management. And this water alone has what is known as a water footprint index, which measures up to 100 parameters just on water. And so the idea is that farmers, essentially the basic principle is farmers should farm better, produce more with less. Be more aware of the context in which we're farming, and ensure that they farm harmoniously with their environment. So it looks at things like ensuring continuous management. Farmers have soil probes to measure moisture of soil, humidity. So if they are doing pivot irrigation, they irrigate when required, when the soil requires it, not because they do it on traditionally that they irrigate at certain times of the day or so many days a week or whatever. It's only when the soil requires it, when it's needed to apply water, when it's needed to apply any other inputs. So essentially the idea is that from a business perspective, what we're saying is that we want to ensure that we can produce product at the same price as conventionally farmed produce, but taking in a holistic approach to ecosystem enhancement and changing mindsets of the farmers in which we work with. Like I mentioned, the idea of the program is to improve soil and water quality, looks at water saving, encourage biodiversity and respect for biodiversity. I mentioned that it's location and growing method specific, so it depends on what crop you're farming, where you're farming the crop, the location of the farm in a particular area and district, and the program or the application of the program would differ from farm to farm, even neighboring farms, depending on the conditions and the soil conditions and etc. relevant to those properties. Very important part of this program is ensuring partnership with the suppliers, because these are long-term programs. So the program is running, as I said, formally for just over 10 years now. We've got about 475 farmers on the program. Covers about approximately 56% of our fresh produce and horticulture at the moment. And the idea is it needs to build on that and grow. And speaking a few days ago to the person that runs this program, the feeling is that this is just the start. It might be 10 years old, but it's just the beginning of the program. These are long-term interventions, requires long-term engagement with a variety of partners, and the only way to make change at this scale is over a long time period. There's also a lot of collaboration with other strategic partners, whether it's the agronomists we work with, suppliers, tertiary institutions, NGOs, and so on. We have a number of partners who work with us on this program. The kinds of outputs we see from farmers working on this program is that we see a reduction in use of synthetic fertilizers, more use of compost rather, and these are all scientifically tested. So the increase in soil carbon, we can track and measure water use reduction at farms per hectare or per kilo or ton of produce generated on the farm. We know that farmers on this program are seeing reductions in fossil fuel usage. They see savings in electricity. And all of these, importantly to note, are large-scale commercial farmers. And so what we're seeing is that these are farmers who are farming more responsibly, more environmentally aware, but maintaining or in many cases improving the yield on the land per hectare. And it's about ensuring that you can farm and produce more produce without having to expand the size of the farm because of the constraints that we spoke about earlier. Mm-hmm. So I think it would be good to hear from farmers themselves. So if you indulge me just for about a minute and a half, I'm not going to play this entire video, but it's just some elements of this video where you hear farmers who are on this program talking about the program.
My father always told me, if there's no farmers, there's no food.
Farming is not easy anymore. This valley has lost more than half of its farmers in the last 10 years.
It takes a whole year just to get to that crop, so you really got to get it right. You only have one chance.
If you're looking at biodiversity, the biggest threat that we have is us.
Without bees, we won't have any pollination in the orchard. And without any pollination, there won't be any farming.
Clearly, we cannot continue the way we are. You have to come up with creative solutions. The idea that you have to expand in order to feed the growing population is a false idea. What you need to do is to increase the productivity, more with less. More food with less water, less energy on less land.
The way I see farming to the future is a way of thinking. It's a way of doing things and actually seeing the reward yourself.
It's a whole process. It's a system to make what we produce better.
Measure yourself. What you did last year? What can I do better this year?
I enjoy farming for the future so much because there's not a right way or a wrong way. It's about knowing what you're doing, measuring what you're doing, and then in having a plan how to be better.
The more healthier your biodiversity is, the more healthier you're going to farm.
Nature is all about balance.
And it's a very satisfying feeling to see that you're farming with nature and not against nature.
And I think it's great to hear from the farmers themselves what the program is about. It was, as they say, it was developed with farmers jointly. It's about farming in partnership with nature, not against nature, about respecting biodiversity, about producing more with less. I think I'll finally end on this. The final slide was we had a researcher from Stanford University come in and do her PhD on our Farming for the Future program, and she published a report in a peer-reviewed journal a year and a half ago around farming for the future. And the two key takeaways are what we see on the screen here, that it has a significant impact on the uptake of good farm management practices compared over time. So farmers who were on the program and compared to how they were before, and comparing farmers on the program to those who are not on the program. And interestingly enough, it was the first ever rigorous analysis of what they deemed a private environmental standard anywhere in the world. So it's quite a proud moment, not just for us as a company, but to say that as a South African organization, we are able to produce programs of this quality and which can produce this kind of impact. I'll end there. Those are my contact details, and happy to engage on this a little further